Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and we are going to look at the final IndyCar race at Laguna Seca. I was going to do this yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to watch the race until the early hours of the morning, and I decided to sleep afterwards. And it's been a busy day, so I've only just got around to doing this now. But I have to say, this was an incredibly enjoyable race. It was manic, and driving standards kind of went out the window. There was a lot of crashes in this race. I think it was like 8 or 9 safety cars in the end. So it got a bit ridiculous, and it didn't start off great, but it was still a very entertaining race. It led to some cars that you maybe not used to seeing as high up the field as normal. Devlin DeFrancesco was doing a good job at one point, and Calipino, Calamilo had a good race. But we'll get onto them as well, and also we'll talk about this year's IndyCar, and we'll have a little chat about next year's IndyCar as well. But let's start off with this race. So Alex Palou was already champion. As we know, he's going into his courtroom disputes with McLaren. So he's got a busy rest of the year ahead of him. And they've also announced I didn't really understand if it was a non-championship race, but it's like $1 million race where they're going to have like heats and like a final race, and the winner of that gets $1 million. That is very, very old-fashioned. Like, that's the sort of thing you used to see in like the 70s, and it's kind of a cool concept to bring it back. But I believe it's after the season starts, which, you know, it would be a great preview to the season if they did it before the season started, like even if it was just a few weeks before, and at like a track they're not going to in the championship. It would have been very, very cool. But by the sounds of it, it's going to be sort of after the first race. But I am still very, very interested in that. I think these show events, I don't know if there is a worth to putting them on. I know NASCAR has a few every year. But I'm intrigued to see what they do with it, at least. So, and after that, the race started with a crash. In fact, multiple cars off. Graham Rahal, Yuri Vips, I think Marcus Armstrong was involved, Carl Kirkwood, Joseph Newgarden, and I think a few others made contact as well. So it was a very messy start, and Newgarden would crash again shortly after. I think that was from damage from the crash. And then just after that, we had a bit of a clean period, but then Felix Rosenqvist, in his final race for Arrow's McLaren, got turned around by Marcus Ericsson in his final race for Chip Ganassi. And I think both drivers will be on the grid, or are rumoured to be on the grid. I think Marcus Ericsson's going to Andretti and Rosenqvist is going to Dale Coyne. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do with those teams. I think Felix Rosenqvist has been a bit disappointing this year, or in the last couple of years really, because he has won an IndyCar race, but he's not been a very consistent driver in IndyCar. And Marcus Ericsson, better than I ever thought he was, but he's kind of fallen off a bit this year. He was much better in 2022. But they both spun out, and then we just had every restart would lead to another accident going into the final corner before the race properly restarted, or it had restarted. But I think Helio Castroneves was involved in one of them, and there's quite a few of them. And we saw, was it Calamilo spin in the pits as well? There was a lot of silliness going on in this race, and it was entertaining, but it was not the cleanest race. Alex Palou led the first half of the race, but he got caught out in one of the safety car periods because he needed to pit, and that dropped him right back down into the field, and Pato O'Ward led for a bit ahead of Romain Grosjean, but they had to pit as well late on, and that left Scott Dixon in the lead going into the final stages of the race, and he took yet another win. I believe it's his first at Laguna Seca though, so that's another thing ticked off the list for him. Incredible drive from Scott Dixon. He's won 3 races in the last 4, I think, or last 5. So, you know, he's still got it. And it ends a brilliant season for Chip Ganassi, because obviously Alex Palou and Scott Dixon are first and second in the championship. And it really couldn't have gone much better for him. And those drivers are coming back next year, so Chip Ganassi will be strong again. Alex Palou, honestly, I can't really get my head around what an achievement it is. He's won 2 IndyCar championships, and he's only been in the IndyCar series for 4 years. Like, he's won half of the IndyCar championships he's been involved with. And he's now at the point where, if he wins the Indy 500, well, he's matched Joseph Newgarden, basically. I know it'll be less wins, but they've accomplished the same. No, Joseph Newgarden had a terrible end to this season, and he's been involved in a few accidents lately. And I think he'll be desperate to get started again in 2024, as will former champion Will Power. This has not been a great title defence, so I think Penske in general they want a big reset for 2024. They really need to go again. There were times this year where Penske looked dominant. It was one of the oval circuits, I can't remember which one, but the Penske's left the field behind, and Newgarden obviously won most of the ovals. But it's just not worked out at every race. Scott McLaughlin's only won once. I think Newgarden's only won the 4 ovals. So it's not a terrible season. And most of the wins have been shared between Penske and Chip Ganassi. You have the likes of Andretti, where this was a terrible year for Andretti. Colton Herta was the big thing coming into this year, linked with Formula One, and obviously Andretti have been as well. But he has done nothing this year. And he's won at the front a few times, but it's never really looked like he was on for the win. Romain Grosjean, at the start of this year, I said I think he will win his first race this year. Never happened. Never came close again after the first few races, really. And this was honestly his best chance. He was in the lead for a few laps, but again it slipped and he dropped out the top 10. It's been an awful year for the Frenchman. I'm not sure he's coming back to IndyCar for 2024. The other Andretti drivers, Devlin Di Francesco Andretti, I can't remember, but he's had a terrible year if he is. I don't understand. Like, they were all competent drivers, and their pace just seems to have disappeared. It's bizarre. Arrows McLaren as well, I think, lacking consistency. Did they win a race this year? I don't think Pato O'Ward or Felix Rosenquist did. I don't remember Alexander Rossi either. So did Arrows McLaren just not win a race? They moved to a 3-car team, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't take a win. And you have the teams like Meyer Shank and Juncos Hollinger, Dale Coyne, AJ Foyt. They're kind of all where you expect. Maybe Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing had a better year than I thought. I think Graham Rahal has been brilliant at times this year, as has Marcus Armstrong. Christian Lundgaard, I think, is one of the stars of the future. I think him, David Malukas, and Carl Kirkwood, 3 absolute young gems, and I think they're all going to be in major seats next year. So honestly, those 3 drivers are outstanding quality. We got, is it Linus Lindqvist coming up as well? I'm sure Christian Rasmussen will be up. So there's a Scandinavian invasion on its way to IndyCar, and there's a few other drivers I can see coming up. I think in Indian XT, people like Nolan Siegel and maybe Jacob Abel Motorsport they did take part in Indy 500. So there's maybe plans for them to move up. But there is a great youth movement in IndyCar right now. So some drivers there to keep an eye on. I think we are losing a few of the older drivers. I think Helio Castroneves has announced he's not doing a full-time season. I don't know if Simon Pagenaud is going to be back. Who else is going? Ryan Hunter-Reay was only obviously brought in as a late substitute for Ed Carpenter. I don't know if we'll see Takuma Sato back, because obviously he was sharing a drive with Marcus Armstrong this year, but Armstrong has announced he's doing the full season next year. So there's a few spaces on the grid, and that's going to be interesting. I know a few of these drivers will definitely be back for the Indy 500, but I think there's a real exciting grid in store for 2024. I think there's going to be some really good, hungry young drivers on it, and that only makes the sport better. In terms of the rookies, I think Marcus Armstrong won the Rookie of the Year in the end. In fact, I'm fairly certain he did. And well-deserved. He hasn't necessarily been the flashiest driver. There's not been many moments where I've gone, oh, Marcus Armstrong, he is fantastic. But he has been solid, usually in the midfield. He stayed out of trouble most of the time, and he's won the Rookie of the Year. He didn't have a lot of competition this year, but he still won it. And that was without doing the ovals. Calapino was a lot better than I thought he would be. But Stingray Rob, biggest disappointment of the year. It's a great name. I love it. It's funny. But he has not had a great year. I think Pedersen's one of the only other rookies that did the whole year. And I mean, he was involved in so many crashes. Most of them not his fault, but we barely saw him all year. So I don't know if he'll get another chance. But I think finally I'll end on like my thoughts for IndyCar. It's one of the best racing series around right now. In terms of entertainment value per race, it is so far and above Formula One in so many ways. And there's a lot from IndyCar I would like to see Formula One take. I think that's a massive compliment. They do paint IndyCar as the biggest motorsport series in the world. And they say the Indy 500 is the greatest race in the world. Don't know if I could say that's definitely true. Honestly, viewing figures are very hard to find, or accurate viewing figures. You tend to get people boasting with huge numbers, but they're not necessarily to be believed. And it's not. Formula One is the biggest motorsport series in the world. Honestly, biggest race, I'd probably say the Le Mans 24 hours. Just because it's 24 hours long. Very long race. But in terms of prestige, I mean, the big three are the Monaco Grand Prix, the Le Mans 24 hours, and the Indy 500. And I think the Monaco Grand Prix has lost a lot of its lustre, but I do think the Le Mans is the grandest motorsport race on the calendar. Indy 500 definitely second, I think. And the IndyCar series is up there, but there is just something that keeps Formula One on top, which I guess you could say it's money, or the manufacturers, or the way it's treated by the media, its owners. But I think the biggest thing is, obviously, it's a world series, whereas IndyCar is just America. As much as America likes to think it's the world does extend beyond America's borders. I don't want to see IndyCar expand out of the North Americas, because that's what the kart series did. I think IndyCar has done it before, but the kart series, I think the biggest problem with that as a product was it was trying to be bigger than the Indy Racing League and Formula One, but it was never as big as Formula One on the world stage, and it kind of diminished its appeal on the national stage. So it's kind of weaker than both in the end. I'm actually going to do a video about the kart racing series fairly soon, and I'm looking forward to doing that because I have watched a lot of kart racing, but I think the history of it is very, very complicated, and there's some very interesting figures and conspiracy theories that we can talk about with the kart racing series. So that is something that's coming out, and something, if you want to see, you should subscribe for. If there's anything you want to leave comments for, anything for me to look at, tell me now. I will look into it, and maybe I'll add it to the video. But the kart series was its thing that just didn't work, and I don't want to see IndyCar go that way. But I think, just in terms of being an entertaining product to watch, IndyCar is light years ahead of Formula One right now. And it is still more prestigious than any other single-seater series out there. So I think IndyCar is in a really good, healthy place. It's a great series to watch. They've got some great young drivers coming through, big teams, big money. This $1 million prize race is going to be interesting to see what they do with that. I think the future looks great for IndyCar, and at the moment, it's my favourite series to watch, and I'm sad it's over for 2023, but I've got all eyes forward for 2024. Really looking forward to it, and hopefully you are too. But whether you are or not, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. My webcam has gone very blurry, so have a good one.